South America is the most rapidly improving region when it comes to RLCS. Over the past 4 RLCS lands, they have always had a team in the top 6, something that is unheard of from a region outside of North America or Europe. Along with this, a South American team won Gamers 8, the only non-RLCS land since the COVID era. Even with the best team leaving the region 2 years in a row now, new teams continue to take their place and show they have what it takes to compete internationally. In the fall split, even after Furia left to compete in North America, Team Secret was able to make top 4 at the fall major. What makes Team Secret's run even crazier is that they were actually the South American 2 seed. They had to battle through a tiebreaker to make the fall major, and they didn't even win an event all split. But if Team Secret was the 2 seed, then who was the South American 1 seed? Well, here we go. In the fall split, South America shaped up to be a 3-team region. The club was comprised with Astramic, BEMS, and Lost. This team swept the split, winning all 3 regionals and went to land as the South American 1 seed. The other 2 teams were Team Secret and Crew, who had to battle it out in a tiebreaker to see who went to the fall major. The Crew roster was Drufino, Drops, and Shad. This was actually Shad's first split back in South America after moving to North America with the old True Neutral roster. In the Fall Invitational, Crew managed to make the finals in order to force the tiebreaker with Team Secret. The Team Secret roster consisted of Sad, KV1, and Knight. And as I've mentioned before, Team Secret went on to win the tiebreaker and make top 4 at the Rotterdam Major. The club, however, was not able to find the same success as Team Secret as they went out 1-3 in the Swiss stage of the Fall Major. A team that didn't make land is Furia, the most recent South America to North America transfer. After what they viewed as a disappointing split, they decided to kick Kaio and take Lost from the club. This meant that just after 1 split in North America, the Great One was headed back to South America, and he decided to team up with Astramic and BEMS, and they joined Ninjas in Pajamas. After losing in the tiebreaker, Crew also decided a roster change was necessary, and they ended up kicking Shad for Brad. So yet again, South America was looking to be a 3-team region. But from the get-go, you could tell this split was going to be something special. For starters, let's look at a little bit of South American history. The last time a team that was expected to make land in South America missed out on the top 4 was back in Winter Regional 1 of last season. So when Ninjas in Pajamas ended up falling at the quarterfinals to Exeed, it was the biggest upset the region had seen in about a year. And honestly, I'd argue that this one was bigger, because back then that was 2 land teams fighting it out way too early in the bracket. This time, it was to a team called Exeed. If you haven't heard of Exeed, that's okay, because neither had really anyone else. Exeed was a roster of KNS, Klaus, and Davitrox, and if you look at their history across the RLCS circuit system, you can see not that much stands out. So the fact that they had taken down the team that had won all 3 regionals of the last split, albeit with Kaio instead of Lost, it was still a massive feat. Meanwhile, you have to think that the Crew roster are loving this, because they were set to face off against Ninjas in Pajamas in the semifinals. Yeah, they weren't loving it for long. All of a sudden, a team that had gone 4-9 across the fall split, comprised of players who had never made a South American top 4 in their lives, were in the finals. And while they ended up getting destroyed by Team Secret as many people expected, they were still in the 2nd place spot to start the split. But if you're like me, you're sitting down, you're doing the math, you're realizing that Ninjas in Pajamas still control their own destiny to the Winter Major. But then the Winter Cup rolls around and Ninjas in Pajamas lose 0-3 in groups to W7M. Who is W7M? In fairness to Ninjas in Pajamas, W7M is actually a pretty stacked roster. We got Royales, Wisty, and Snips. Snips was on the Era Eternity roster that made the Fall Major last year. Royales was on the Endgame roster that made top 4 and a finals in the last split. And Wisty is a fairly new player who hasn't had much results in 3s yet, but is starting to make a name for himself in the 1 seed. In the Winter Open, this team actually got top 4, but fell to Team Secret in the semifinals. So while Ninjas in Pajamas were expected to beat W7M, it's also not a terrible loss, until you look at the bracket and realize they got 2nd in Group B. Now if you watch my video on OCE, you might know what this means, but Group B 2nd place is almost a death sentence. If you get 2nd in Group D and win your matchup in Round 1, you end up facing the first team out of Group A. This is normally an issue because the 1 seed out of Group A is normally the number 1 team in the region. In this case, it was Team Secret. So yeah, the 2 land teams fighting out in the quarterfinals, with one of them having already gone out in the quarterfinals at the last event. The stakes could not have been higher for Ninjas in Pajamas, and thankfully, the series delivered. Team Secret managed to take down Ninjas of Pajamas in a Game 7 overtime. While not a bad loss, Ninjas of Pajamas now needed a ton of help to be able to make the Winter Major. Things weren't looking terrible for them heading into Championship Sunday, as the same top 4 from the last event had made top 4 this event. The best case scenario for Ninjas of Pajamas was for Team Secret to go and win the event. And while the surrounding scenarios seemed difficult to overcome for Ninjas of Pajamas, this felt like one that they could rely on. But apparently, Exeed just has a vendetta. In 4 back-to-back 1-0 games, Exeed managed to knock Team Secret out of the tournament. A team no one had heard of 3 weeks prior was in the finals 2 events in a row. On the other side of the bracket, Crew managed to take down W7M and qualify for the finals themselves. This meant that for the first time since the start of the circuit system, South America had 6 players in the finals who had never won an event before. And while Exeed had become famous for going 2-0 down and sweeping the next 4 games, they weren't able to do it this time and they got swept by Crew in the finals. Also, a bit of a side note, imagine losing because your teammate respawned underneath your flim path. Like, how brutal is that? After being a staple in the 4th through 2nd range for about a year now, Crew finally won an event. This puts them at 32 points, which ties them with Team Secret as they both have a win and a top 4 finish, as well as Exeed, who has 2 top 2 finishes. So in the end, it actually all comes full circle. We do have a 3-horse race for South America, and it's closer than ever before. The top 3 teams all have 32 points, and it has to sort itself out over the next event. Not too far behind those teams is W7M, who if they win the event, are able to at least force a tiebreaker. And while it might be a little crazy to picture W7M winning an event, it can't be too much crazier than anything we've seen this split. What is probably too crazy at this point is Ninjas in Pajamas making it. In order to have a chance, they need to win the event, and they need 2 out of the top 3 teams to go out in groups. And that's just not happening. That being said, due to their recent performances, they've actually been bumped down to the 5th seed heading into the Winter Invitational, being they'll have Exeed in their group. So while San Diego might not be on the menu, there's a good chance that revenge could be. But at this point, who knows? I haven't even mentioned Parabellum or Endgame or the club's new roster or True Neutral. The point is, the top of South America is getting more stacked. No matter how many teams leave, more teams are popping up. So if you find yourself getting tired of watching Carmine Corps destroy the same teams week after week after week, tune into South America. It's going to be good.